And so is that it? Is this where this whole thing stops? It's just a civil lawsuit. In other words, Strickland just filed this claim in federal district court just to get some money and we're going to forget about it. The answer is no. So this actually even gets worse. When we go back to the article, you'll see here that in addition to suing this president, so Ujiri, the NBA president, in addition to suing him, this cop and the sheriff from Alameda County, Greg Ahern, they wanted him to be charged with a crime. Specifically, they wanted to charge him with battery of a peace officer. The Alameda County Sheriff Greg Ahern initially requested Ujiri be charged with battery of a peace officer. The Alameda County District Attorney's Office declined to press the charges after an investigation ended with a meeting among the office, Ujiri, and his lawyers in October. So they were going to even charge him with a crime for this whole thing. They want to sue him and get money out of him personally, but they wanted to lock him up. It started with that. Officer Strickland said, this guy assaulted me. You saw with your own eyes what really happened there. A guy with lawful authority to be on the court who was pulling out his identification, got thrown by an officer who bull rushed him, threw him again, and then an altercation took place. That officer instigated and caused this entire ordeal to happen. He could have just put his hands up and said, hey, where are you going? Hey, this is closed. Can I see some identification? Which would have been a reasonable way to approach the situation, but that cop didn't. The cop, call him racist, call him whatever you want. The guy's an asshole as far as I can tell. A guy is coming right up to him. He throws him and then bull rushes him right in his face to get up in his face and tell him, I'm in charge here, and pushes him again as he's holding his badge that says I'm entitled to be on the court right there. Other people around the area are pulling back on that officer and saying, hey, we know this guy. He's got authority to be there. What are you doing, in other words? And they wanted to charge him with a crime for that. So a cop instigates, causes the altercation to take place. And when you respond, then they want to charge you with the crime. We see this all over the place, right? We saw this in Breonna Taylor's case. Remember that situation? We're not going to talk about it today on the show because there's not much to talk about. Nothing's happened. Nobody's been arrested in that case as far as I know thus far. But the point is those cops, they went to Breonna Taylor's house. They started firing into her room. They killed her. They thought that they had the right house and the right residence. They were doing a no-knock raid on that place. And the guy that they were after was already in custody somewhere else. They ended up shooting the Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who was in the room with him, fired back at the cops. So the cops start this situation. And because he fired back in self-defense, he didn't know who they were or what was going on. They charged him with the crime. So they caused the situation, then they charge you with the crime for your response. It's exactly what happened in Masai's case. Now, fortunately for him, this guy is the president of an NBA team. So he's got the money. He's got the resources to go and defend against this case. He probably had very good lawyers who are probably very expensive. When a situation like this happens, that officer goes back, files a report. So if you read the rest of the article, it was a good article, it was on Washington Post. Masai ends up, everybody breaks up those two. They say he's got authority to be there. So he actually does make it down to the court and he has conversations and does interviews while he's down there on the floor. But then this officer goes back, he's going to write a report, probably a bunch of nonsense in that report. And he's going to, submit that to his sheriff, and they're going to submit it over to the prosecutor's office and say, look, we think that you got to charge this guy. They didn't. They sat down because Masai and his attorneys, in all likelihood, went and had what's called a pre-charging conversation. So they met with that prosecutor's office, the pre-charging bureau, had a conversation with them, and then determined this case isn't going to go anywhere. These guys have high-powered lawyers. Maybe they reviewed the body camera footage. Who knows what happened? But all said and done, they decided, this is not a winnable case. And they decided that they were going to not press charges. So his attorneys moved very quickly. They probably got the body cameras quickly, got the discovery, the police reports, and all that stuff quickly. And if you notice, when we watched that entire situation that took place on the court, everybody was on his side. So Masai, he had everybody, people were pulling that cop's shoulders back like, dude, what are you doing? We all know who this person is. He has the right to be here. So he's got a number of witnesses. He's got many, many people who are going to help him out. And the article goes on to say that he actually does. He's got 3 witnesses who are going to vouch for him and say that he was not the initial aggressor. But this still happened. What if this were you? What if this happened on the side of the road or on the street outside of a bar, behind an alley somewhere, or something where there really are no witnesses, where you don't have access to an attorney, where there's not cameras recording from every which angle, you don't have people who are on the ground with you saying, no, he didn't do anything, or you don't even have the resources to go and get the body cameras or get the discovery or have a pre-charging meeting with the prosecutor's office, because you don't have the resources to do it. You don't know you should do it. You're just somebody who's in a lower to middle class sort of economic category, and you don't have the resources to go hire attorneys. These cops do this all the time. This guy just had the audacity to do it in front of an entire stadium filled with people, and he happened to catch the wrong guy, who was the president. But what if this were somebody else? What if this were just another fan who was in sort of one of those lower socioeconomic statuses, who didn't have the resources? What would have happened? He may very well have been charged with a crime. The prosecutors may not have looked at it. They say, we trust our police. We just, we read the reports. We don't review the body cameras. We don't have time to review it. Our officer is pretty trustworthy. And so they're just going to charge that person with the crime, and they're going to have to deal with the consequences. Even if the case is dismissed at a later date, that person may have come out of pocket tens of thousands of dollars to hire an attorney. I'm sure that Masai's bill is going to be very expensive. Now, he's filing a counterclaim, which is how this video came out. So the officer was suing him. He's filing a counterclaim against that officer. I think this officer's case is in big trouble. I don't think there's any likelihood that he wins, especially based on what we just saw here. Sounds like a big baby to me, saying he got hit in the face, hit in the chest with both fists, caused him great mental, emotional, psychological, physical, nervous pain and suffering. This was a pretty standard altercation that cop started, and his name is Strickland. His name is, we found the picture of him. Let's put that up one more time, just so we don't forget who it is. We've got Alan Strickland right here. This guy is a bad police officer. He's a bad popo, and hopefully they do something about that. I hope that he loses his suit. Hats off to Masai for what he has. He's sort of being very aggressive and proactive and fighting back against this thing, which is the right move. And hopefully law enforcement does something about this guy, or does something about Alameda County. I mean, the sheriff had this guy's back. Greg Ahern was gonna charge him with these crimes. There's no crimes that were committed there. But when you insult another officer, they all circle their wagons and they get your back. That's just how it works. So remember that when you see these types of situations happen, if you were in those shoes, the situation may go very differently for you. So Alan Strickland is a bad popo.